we're just flowing from one deck to the other. We went from Scizor to Dark Scizor NocLock, and now we are doing Dark Gengar NocLock. Deep Sleep can be a really useful ability, especially when you need to stall out in a powerhouse on your opponent's side of the field. But the main draw of Dark Gengar is that it is an absolute nightmare for baby Pokemon on your opponent's bench. Pull In can deal 30 damage to them without having to flip a coin. The official Wizard's ruling is that the effect of the attack is actually on the active Pokemon. So as long as the active Pokemon isn't a baby Pokemon, you don't have to flip a coin, and the incoming damage will be done to the benched baby Pokemon without having to flip a coin because the attack has already initiated. The baby effect states that before you can even initiate an attack, you have to flip a coin first. But because the attack has already technically started, the baby effect can't stop an attack that's already in progress, even if that baby Pokemon becomes the active Pokemon right in the middle of the attack. So Dark Gengar's Pull In actually creates this weird loophole where you can OHKO Baby Pokemon without any coin flips. And you may be thinking, well, all your opponent has to do is not play down any more baby Pokemon onto their bench if you've already knocked one out. Then Pull In's not going to be nearly as effective. You're not going to be able to get OHKOs. Well, that's where Dark Haunter comes into play, as you can use Callback for just one Psychic Energy to put a baby Pokemon from your opponent's discard back onto their bench with a damage counter already on it. Plus, Dark Haunter has a free retreat, so once you use Callback and put a baby Pokemon back on your opponent's bench, which they can't get rid of, they can't just discard a Cleffa off of their bench, you can free retreat back into Gengar, use Pull In, get another easy OHKO. Dark Haunter and Dark Gengar are both a little on the low side when it comes to HP, but they don't have a weakness and they can both benefit from the Rocket's Hideout Stadium. And they definitely have support from other Pokemon and other trainers that we'll get into right now. One additional reason that this deck is so useful is because the Fossil Ghastly, that was actually really good, very underrated for its time in the base set era, got reprinted in Legendary Collection. So it's got 50 HP, which is already just as much as Dark Haunter. No weakness, free retreat, and Lick is a great attack to start a game with. And you're going to want to get a Dark Gengar set up as quickly as possible, but using Dark Haunter as a stepping stone isn't that bad either. You can use Surround on turn 2 and you evolve up into Dark Haunter, which is a pretty good attack on its own. It's made better if you already have Dark Gengar on the bench, that way you can also utilize Deep Sleep, but it's not a necessity to make that attack worthwhile. Like I said in the intro, Pull In can be devastating to any opponent that makes the mistake of playing even one baby Pokemon. A lot of decks were still using Cleffa, a lot of decks still use Magby, Igglybuff, Elekid, Pichu. Even if they know they're up against a Dark Gengar and they purposely keep baby Pokemon in their hand, they keep them out of their discard, off of the bench, you can still work around that and make Dark Gengar a really tough card to play against. Another reason is because I'm running 3/3 Noctowl in this deck, meaning that you're going to be able to look at their hand and discard a lot of their trainers every turn. Most of the time you'll have at least one Noctowl set up on turn 2, if not a couple of them, meaning that you can flip 2 coins, potentially get 2 trainers out of your opponent's hand, which is going to help Gengar because one of Gengar's major weaknesses is if your opponent has Double Gust or a Switch, it gives them an easy out for sleep, but it can also help them work around Pull In. If they can get a baby Pokemon in the active position before you use Pull In, you're going to have to flip a coin for it. But with the help of Noctowl, you can look at your opponent's hand, see if they have any of those cards, and send them right back to the deck with Noctowl's power. 2 copies of Mischievous in this deck as well, because if you get something that is really tough to deal with, some kind of powerhouse Pokemon on your opponent's side of the field, you can just switch into Mischievous, use Night Eyes, and combo that with Dark Gengar's power to make it so that your opponent has to flip 2 coins off of that guaranteed sleep that you're inflicting. And then if you've got the energy for it, you can use Perish Song, which most decks aren't prepared to deal with. Not these attacks that are just instant KOs. And like I said, your opponent can get out of that situation easily with a Switch or a Double Gust, but Noctowl's gonna make it really hard to do that. So if you're not having any luck baby sniping, you can just use the Mischievous Dark Gengar combo, still utilizing Noctowl's power to get rid of those utility trainers that are really gonna be necessary for your opponent to get out of those sticky situations, and just remove that from their toolkit altogether, so that your Perish Song is just going to straight up knock out Pokemon every other turn. Unless your opponent is able to flip double heads and get out of sleep and retreat, which is possible. But for your own setup, you got 2 copies of Professor Elm, full playset of Copycat, in the hopes that your opponent is also playing Professor Elm or is using an Eek off of a Cleffa. That way you could just refresh your hand the same way that they have. Get a bunch of cards in there. Use Pokemon Fan Club to get your early setup with your Ghastlies and Hoot Hoots. Boss's Way is going to help you get those evolution cards very easily. Pokemon Trader to swap out the unneeded evolution cards you have in your hand for the ones that are going to be helpful that turn. A full playset of Double Gust so that you can make sure your opponent's baby Pokemon is on the bench whenever you want to use Pull In to avoid that coin flip. Full playset of Focus Band for your Ghastlies and your Dark Haunters for if you're using Dark Haunters Callback, as well as Mischievous since it is also on the lower HP side, but 2 copies of Goldberry for your Dark Gengars. With the boosted HP they're going to be getting from Rocket's Hideout, you won't have to worry about them as much, but Goldberry is going to help keep them alive longer so that you can just use Pull In over and over again and keep that deep sleep effect active for as long as you can. 2 copies of Talon Volunteers to help recycle your lost Mons, and even some Psychic Energy every now and then if you are a little bit energy screwed. 2 copies of Rocket's Hideout. It's going to be a very helpful stadium for this deck. And in Neo-On, you don't have to worry a whole lot about counter stadiums. Decks just didn't run as many stadiums as something like Rocket On or Base Neo, where it was almost a necessity to run at least a couple copies of some stadium. That way you had a counter stadium against your opponent. Just not as big of a deal in Neo-On, so a couple copies of Rocket's Hideout, you should be pretty safe. There are quite a few other Dark Pokemon decks that may just let you throw that out there. In this case, I think it's going to help out your Dark Haunters and your Dark Gengars a lot more than it's going to help something like a Dark Scizor or a Dark Houndoom deck, since this deck is more focused on just staying alive long enough to keep your opponent eternally asleep while you deal chip damage to them. This deck does fall in a kind of weird space where you're either just getting one-hit KOs on baby Pokemon, or you're slowly whittling away your opponent, or you're just getting straight-up KOs with Perish Song. It's a unique deck, and I really like it. One thing that I absolutely love about Dark Gengar is that it can OHKO bench Grimers, which is huge. Your opponent's going to be afraid to try to evolve up into Mucks because they're going to have to play a Grimer down, and if you've already got a Dark Gengar, what's the point? You're going to get OHKO'd by it. And yeah, Muck can shut this deck down pretty hard because it's shutting down both Noctowl and Dark Gengar, but good luck getting a Muck onto the field against a Dark Gengar deck. If you're playing against a Gator deck, Parasect can cause some trouble for Dark Haunter because it is going to prevent you from pulling any baby Pokemon or basic Pokemon out of the discard and throwing it down on the bench with Callback. But you can always Double Gust a Parasect into the active position and put it to sleep, which would shut down Allergic Pollen and you just resume your strategy as usual. For tanky Pokemon like Steelix, you are going to have to rely on Perish Song a little more than you may be comfortable with, especially since Mischievous only has 50 HP. In those cases, you're really hoping your opponent doesn't hit those double coin flips and wake up against a Mischievous and just straight up knock it out. But most Steelix decks utilize at least one baby Pokemon, so it is a rarity that you're having to rely completely on Mischievous's Perish Song. Because this is a Stage 2 deck, the main concern is really just being outsped by something that can shut down Dark Gengar with a special condition, or if they can get a Muck out before you can knock out the opposing Grimer. So your biggest enemy is really just speed decks. This is my personal favorite version of NocLock, especially for Neo-On, but Dark Haunter also pairs well with so many other cards in this format, so rest assured I will be coming back to Dark Haunter and pairing it with all types of different cards for different rogue decks. I'm not sure if Dark Gengar will be making any more appearances on the channel, but if you've got a Dark Gengar deck that you really like that you think I should try out, let me know down in the comments. Let me know what you think about this build. If you've got any other request decks, go ahead and chuck those down in the comments as well. Links to socials are in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned to the channel for more vintage Pokemon content. And until next video, bye.